My daughter-in-law held the estate document with a confident smile, convinced that her name was about to be placed next to mine on an $8 million property portfolio. She had spent months persuading me that it was just for tax purposes and that it would protect the family assets. But when she reached the page that listed the true beneficiary of my estate, the name I had chosen without telling anyone, her smile vanished. The paper slipped from her fingers, and she whispered, "This can't be real." In that moment, I looked her in the eye and said, "You should never plan a future using money that was never meant to be yours." My name is Evelyn Hartley, and I am 71 years old. My husband, Richard, passed away 9 years ago, leaving behind not just wealth, but a legacy that he and I spent a lifetime building together. I devoted my life to preserving that legacy, not just for my own son, Andrew, but for the values we believed in: honesty, responsibility, and family. I never imagined that the greatest threat to that legacy would come from someone who called me Mom at the dinner table and hugged me every Christmas as if she truly cared. My daughter-in-law, Jasmine, began showing sudden interest in my financial affairs, offering to help, suggesting changes, and wrapping every concern in sweet words that sounded like protection but felt like control. Since Richard's death, I have lived alone in our coastal home in South Carolina. My days were peaceful. I tended to my garden, volunteered at the local library, and hosted Sunday dinners for my son and his wife. Andrew, my only child, is a good man, hardworking, kind-hearted, and easily trusting. Jasmine, his wife, was the polished, outgoing type. She had a way of making people feel important when she spoke to them, and over time she made herself indispensable in our family gathering. At first I was grateful. She brought me flowers, helped me decorate the house, insisted that I shouldn't stress about finances in my old age. But then her language changed. She started saying things like, "Evelyn, you need to start putting names on things now before it's too late. And if the government gets involved, half your estate could disappear." She told me that adding her name to my properties would prevent taxes and legal fees. She said it was temporary, just paperwork. It was all said with such confidence, such practiced calm, that my son believed every word. Andrew told me, "Mom, Jasmine is just trying to protect you." What he didn't know was that Jasmine had already opened accounts in her brother Caleb's name. She wasn't planning to share anything. She was planning to take everything. But here is what she didn't know. I was not nearly as trusting as she believed, and I had already taken steps to protect my estate in a way she could never touch. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Your support helps bring real stories like this to light. Everything began changing slowly, in small ways that could almost be dismissed if I hadn't been paying attention. Jasmine started inserting herself into every conversation about finances, always with a polished smile and a tone that suggested she was doing me a favor. One afternoon, as we sat on my porch overlooking the garden, she casually said, "Evelyn, it would be so much safer if my name was jointly added to your properties. It's not about ownership, it's just a safety precaution. If something happens to you, Andrew and I could act immediately." She said it with such calm certainty that I could see how easily my son had fallen under her influence. But I stayed quiet, letting her believe I was considering it. Days later, I overheard a conversation that confirmed every fear I had. Jasmine was in the kitchen, speaking softly on the phone to her brother Caleb. I heard her say, "Once my name is on everything, we can start the transfers. Andrew won't know until it's done. And even if he finds out, it will be too late to undo it." Her voice was steady, almost businesslike. My heart pounded, not with shock, but with clarity. This wasn't suspicion, it was confirmation. She was trying to strip my estate piece by piece, using the legal system as her weapon, and she was using my son's love for her as her shield. I confronted Andrew gently, not accusing him, but asking questions. "Do you know Jasmine has been talking to Caleb about property transfers?" His face filled with confusion. "Mom, Caleb is just helping her with financial planning. You're taking this the wrong way." His words hurt, but his eyes told me something more important. He truly had no idea what Jasmine was doing. I realized then that Jasmine's manipulation wasn't emotional, it was strategic. She had convinced Andrew that everything she was doing was to protect me and the family. She had carefully positioned herself as my advocate while secretly plotting my financial erasure. But instead of confronting her and risking pushing Andrew further into her narrative, I decided to let her think she was winning. The next phase of her manipulation became more aggressive. Jasmine began bringing legal papers to my home, each one labeled with friendly titles like estate simplification and family tax adjustment. She would place them in front of me, smile sweetly, and say, "Just sign here. This will avoid so much trouble in the future." I would pretend to hesitate, then say, "Let me sleep on it." Each time I delayed, she grew more persistent. Her tone shifted from gentle persuasion to subtle pressure. "Evelyn, these things are time-sensitive. If you wait too long, the government could seize a portion of your estate." She was trying to scare me. What she didn't realize was that I saw through her completely. One evening, I walked into my study and noticed my desk drawers had been opened. Nothing was taken, but things were slightly rearranged. Jasmine had been searching for my original estate documents. I knew then that it wasn't enough to delay her. I had to act. Behind the scenes, I contacted my attorney, one of the most discreet and respected estate lawyers in the state, and told him everything. He explained that if I created an irrevocable trust, it would remove my assets from personal ownership entirely. No one, not Jasmine, not even Andrew, could alter or claim anything inside that trust. My wealth would be legally untouchable, but it had to be done quietly. If Jasmine found out, she could attempt to rush other legal actions. Meanwhile, her behavior escalated from pressure to control. She started arriving unannounced, bringing food, rearranging my schedule, even trying to accompany me to doctor appointments. She framed it as care, but I felt the truth behind it. It was surveillance. One afternoon, I returned from a walk to find Jasmine sitting at my desk, reviewing my mail. When she saw me, she put on a smile and said, "Oh, I was just making sure nothing important got missed." That was the moment I decided to let her fully believe she had won. I told her, "You're right. It's time we finalize everything. Bring whatever forms I need to sign." The relief that washed over her face was proof. She truly believed I was surrendering. She had no idea that I had already signed the trust documents that placed every asset, my properties, investments, and future earnings, into an irrevocable foundation under a single beneficiary she would never expect. Jasmine thought I was a naive old woman clinging to the past, but I was a mother protecting the future, not just mine, but my son's, my late husband, and the generations to come, and she had no idea what was coming next. The morning Jasmine arrived with her polished leather folder and a look of triumphant satisfaction, I already had everything in motion. She walked into my home as if she were entering a property she already owned, placing the documents neatly on the table, her tone dripping with false kindness. "Evelyn," she said, "this is really for your peace of mind. Once my name is added, you won't have to worry about a single thing. Andrew and I will handle everything for you." I smiled gently and nodded, pretending to be relieved. I told her, "You've been such a blessing. Thank you for guiding me through all of this. I actually took your advice and had some papers drawn up as well, to make things even easier." She raised an eyebrow, slightly taken aback but intrigued, and asked, "What paper?" I reached into my drawer and pulled out a thick envelope sealed with a gold tab. "These," I said calmly, "are the final estate document. Everything is already taken care of. What you brought is no longer necessary." I placed the envelope in front of her. She hesitated, then slowly opened it, fully expecting to see her name on the estate. But what she saw instead made the confident smile disappear from her face. Inside were the official documents for the Evelyn Hartley Irrevocable Trust, a legally binding entity that now held 100% of my estate. It clearly stated that all properties, financial accounts, and assets were no longer in my personal ownership and could never be altered, contested, or transferred. Not by me, not by any family member, not by any court motion. The sole and permanent beneficiary was listed in bold letters. the Hartley Legacy Foundation for Children in Crisis, a charitable foundation created in honor of my late husband and my own childhood spent in foster care. Jasmine flipped through the pages rapidly, confusion turning to panic as she realized her name was nowhere on any page. Her hands began to tremble. Her voice cracked slightly as she looked up at me and said, "What is this? Where is my name? Where is Andrew's name?" I remained composed and said, "Jasmine, this estate was never meant to be a personal fortune. It was built to change lives, to help children who had nothing. It will outlive me, you, and even Andrew." She blinked hard, trying to maintain control. But Andrew is your son. This belongs to him, to us. We're family." I leaned forward and spoke softly but firmly. "Family is built on love and trust, not greed. My son will continue my legacy as the voluntary trustee of the foundation, not as the inheritor of assets you can control or transfer to your brother." Her face hardened. Her polite mask fell away completely. "This is illegal," she snapped. "You can't just lock everything away without giving your son access." I pointed to the legal seal on the document. "It's already done. Irrevocable means permanent. You encouraged me to move quickly, and I did. Thank you for the motivation." She froze. Her mouth opened slightly, as if she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. Her carefully crafted plan had collapsed in an instant. If she had succeeded in adding her name before I took action, she could have drained the estate. But I had executed the trust before she ever showed up with her fraudulent intentions. The more she read, the more she realized every loophole was closed. Every pathway she intended to exploit was blocked. Then she flipped to the final page. Her eyes widened. It was a certified record revealing that I had documented her attempts to coerce me into signing financial documents, including recorded conversations and digital transfers she had made in secret to accounts under her brother's name. I saw the exact moment she understood. Not only had she lost access to my estate, but she had incriminated herself. She stood up abruptly, papers still clutched in her hand, and whispered, "This can't be real. You're ruining everything." I looked at her with unwavering calm and said, "No, Jasmine, I am protecting everything. There's a difference." She stared at me for a long, silent moment, then slammed the papers onto the table. As she turned to leave, she stopped at the doorway and hissed, "Andrew will never forgive you for this." I replied, "He will once he knows the truth, and I have already made sure he will see it all." That was the moment everything shifted. I was no longer reacting to her plans. I was executing mine. The truth was now unstoppable, and Jasmine had just realized the power she thought she had never truly existed. The confrontation that would decide everything took place not in my home, but in my attorney's office 2 days later. By Jasmine's own doing. She had demanded a meeting with Andrew present, believing she could manipulate him emotionally and corner me legally. When we arrived, Andrew looked confused, caught between loyalty to his wife and the love he had for his mother. Jasmine walked into the conference room with the same confidence I had seen the day she tried to take over my estate, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a binder full of accusations. She sat down, placed her hand dramatically over Andrew, and began with a trembling voice, designed to gain sympathy. "Evelyn has made decisions that could destroy our family's financial future," she began. "She has hidden assets, locked everything away behind Andrew's back, and acted out of spite." Andrew looked at me, his expression pained. Jasmine continued, "She created something called an irrevocable trust, which gives us no rights, no access, no inheritance. It's all gone. Your mother has abandoned you, Andrew." The room was silent. I watched my son's face closely. His eyes were searching, not angry, not convinced, just searching for the truth. Before I could speak, my attorney calmly slid a thick folder across the table and said, "Mr. Hartley, perhaps you should hear your mother's reasons in her own words, but more importantly, in your brother-in-law's words." Jasmine stiffened at the mention of her brother. She tried to speak, but my attorney pressed play on the audio recording. Caleb's voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. "Once Mom's assets are in Jasmine's name, we start liquidating and moving it into my holding accounts. Once the money is transferred, it's untouchable. Andrew doesn't need to know." Andrew's face turned white. His eyes slowly moved from the speaker to Jasmine. "What is this?" he asked quietly. Jasmine stuttered, trying to find an explanation. It's not what you think. Caleb was just... My attorney interrupted and opened a second folder, revealing documented online transfers Jasmine had already initiated to Caleb's accounts. Each transfer was marked with her digital signature. Andrew stared at the pages in disbelief. "You were moving my mother's money to Caleb?" he asked, his voice cracking with betrayal. Jasmine stood up suddenly, panic in her eyes. "Andrew, listen to me. Your mother is lying. She's setting me up. She never trusted me. That's why she created that trust." I stood up and faced both of them. My voice was calm, composed, steady. "I trusted you until you gave me reason not to. I welcomed you into this family. You looked me in my eyes and called me Mom. And all the while you were preparing to take everything, not because you needed it, but because you believed I was old and easy to deceive." The room fell completely silent. Jasmine's face hardened. She turned to Andrew, desperation now bursting through her composure. "You are my husband. You have to choose. Is your loyalty with your mother or your wife?" Andrew stood there for a moment, heartbreak in his eyes, before he slowly spoke. "My loyalty is with the truth." The attorney then revealed the final page of the trust agreement, showing Andrew's name, not as an inheritor, but as the appointed trustee of a foundation that would carry forward everything his father and I had built. "Your mother did not disinherit you," the attorney explained. "She placed you in a position of honor, responsibility, and trust, without the risk of your wife or anyone else controlling or draining your family's legacy." Andrew's eyes filled with tears as he turned to me and said, "Mom, you protected us." In that moment, the last piece of Jasmine's facade cracked. She looked at me with pure disbelief, as if she had never considered she could lose. But she had not just lost control of my estate. She had revealed her true intentions to the one person she believed she had complete influence over. She slowly backed away from the table, grabbed her bag, and whispered under her breath, "This isn't over." I looked at her and replied, with absolute finality, "Yes, Jasmine, it is." In that moment, power shifted forever, not because of money, but because the truth had been revealed. Jasmine walked out of that office not as a victorious planner of wealth, but as a woman exposed, cornered, and defeated by the very trust she tried to manipulate. When Jasmine walked out of that office, the sound of the door closing behind her felt like the end of a battle I had been preparing for long before she ever walked into my life. It was not the kind of victory that comes with cheering or celebration. It was the kind of victory that comes with quiet strength, the certainty that justice had prevailed, and that my husband's life's work, my own sacrifices, and my son's future were finally protected. In the days that followed, I watched the tension slowly leave Andrew's shoulders. He had been unknowingly caught between loyalty to his wife and the truth of his mother's intentions, manipulated by someone who used the language of love to disguise the hunger for wealth. When the truth came out, Andrew didn't just see his wife differently, he saw himself differently. He apologized to me not just as a son, but as a man who realized how close he had come to losing his family's legacy. I told him, "I didn't build this for myself. I built it so that when I am gone, you will have a purpose greater than money." That was the beginning of his transformation. Instead of mourning what Jasmine had tried to take, he became energized by what he could now build. The Hartley Legacy Foundation, which had once been a quiet plan in my heart, turned into our shared mission. We began meeting every morning in my dining room, turning it into a place of strategy and vision. Andrew reached out to community leaders, children's hospitals, foster care networks, places where hope was needed most. What had once been my estate became our movement. Meanwhile, Jasmine's actions caught up with her. When she attempted to file a legal motion to challenge the trust, the court denied it immediately, citing the irrevocable legal status. When she tried to file spousal claims on Andrew's behalf, Andrew himself submitted a formal objection, including evidence of her attempted financial fraud. Her brother Caleb, facing investigation for money laundering, cut all communication with her. For someone who built her self-worth on social appearances and power, the greatest consequence was not legal, it was social. She lost everything she tried to take, but I didn't follow her downfall. I didn't speak ill of her. I didn't carry bitterness. Because the greatest success of all was realizing something profound. Greed destroys itself. It consumes those who worship it. And in the end, it always collapses under its own weight. As months passed, the foundation opened its doors. I still remember the first child who walked through the entrance. A quiet little girl with shy eyes who had lost both her parents and had no one left. She held onto the hand of a social worker, her small shoulders hunched as if she expected life to hurt her again. I knelt down to her level, smiled gently, and said, "This is your home now. You are safe here." In that moment, every sleepless night, every painful memory, every confrontation was worth it. My wealth had not been taken. It had been transformed. It was no longer currency. It was purpose. It was protection. It was love put into motion. When I placed my hand on the foundation's dedication plaque the day of its opening, I whispered to my late husband, Richard, "We did it. What we built will outlive us, and it will never be controlled by greed." As I end this chapter of my life, I look toward the future not with fear, but with peace. I have secured a legacy that cannot be stolen, altered, or manipulated. I protected my family, not just by holding on to money, but by directing it toward what truly matters. And to every person listening to my story, I say this: your legacy is not what you leave behind in a will. It's what you build with your heart while you're still here. If this story inspired you and reminded you that true strength is protecting what's right, not what's easy, make sure to subscribe to this channel and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need them.